Alafia, I'm Dr. Gloria Latimore-Peace, editor and publisher of Mo Better News. We have with us this afternoon guests from show business. In fact, our subject is show business and the inner city. First, we'd like to introduce someone that everyone knows, or at least everyone ought to. Useni Eugene Perkins, playwright, poet, so many things, including the founder of the Association for the Positive Development of African American Youth. And next we have Nora Brooks-Blakely. Nora Brooks-Blakely is the artistic director of Chocolate Chips, and we'll be talking a little bit about Chocolate Chips and what they do and showing an excerpt from Chocolate Chips' performance. And finally, and last but not least, we have Dr. Abena Joan Brown, who is co-founder of the Eta Arts Foundation, an actress with an attitude, and someone that we're going to enjoy immensely on this particular show and tell of I Can. But right now we want to look at an excerpt from a recent production at ETA that starred Alan Edge and Jennifer Hunt. It's called Rings Around Rosie.
All right. You all right, Rosie?
Yeah, I'm all right.
No, I mean really all right. You're not sick or nothing, is you?
No, I'm not sick.
Well, I mean, if you was sick or something, though. I mean, like, if you had cancer, you wouldn't hide that from me, would you?
Cancer? George Washington Carver Caldwell. What done got into you? No, I'm not sick.
Oh, well, I don't know, Rosie. Things done took a change around here. Ever since that night I got mad about that material you was working on, there's something different about you. Now, I don't know what it is, but I can't put my finger on it. It's like that material had a life of its own. Now, I done told you I was sorry.
George.
You always understood before.
George, you done told me 100 times you were sorry. I know you sorry, but you remember that night. Didn't you say you was going to quit drinking?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I remember that. It's just that, some things take time to deal with than other things. And, let me see how good your memory is. Come here. Look here. Do you remember how long we've known each other?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you remember we picked and met in the field side by side?
Yeah.
And do you also remember we was married 9 months to the day before the little one came?
Yeah, I remember all that.
So, what you doing this evening? In other words, what your daughter doing? She gonna be here tonight?
Oh, yeah. She said she's going to come back and give me a hand.
Shoot.
Why?
Lord of mercy, my woman asking me why? Oh, I'm gonna get some fun out of you, girl. Getting up early in the morning, folks coming through here for day, and you looking so good, googly muggly. Hey, you know what? Let's go out to a Club Raise tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Like we used to.
Oh, I like that.
Don't want nobody around when I'm not at home and you're all alone. Oh, shoot, we can't go there.
Why?
I don't get paid till Friday.
Oh.
Yeah, that's all right, though. You be here.
Okay.
I'll be here.
All right.
Baby, that's all that's necessary.
George.
That was an excerpt from Rings Around Rosie, a recent production of ETA, and certainly we need to give credit to the author, who is Frances DeVore Harrison, and the director, who is Van Til Whitfield. And of course, we have in our studio the producer of the play, Rings Around Rosie, and we just saw Alan Edge and Jennifer Hunt doing that excerpt. We have in our studio, as I have said, Dr. Abena Joan Brown, who's the producer of that play and many other plays and an actress in her own right. And I want her to talk to me about show business, both ends of it, show and business.
Right now?
Right now.
Well, you've seen the show, and I think this particular play is one of 4, which came through what we call our Playwright Development Discovery Initiative. And that's essentially to bring the playwright into collaboration with the theater process. It's very strange that many playwrights are not connected to the theater. They do as writers tend to do. They write in isolation and they present the play for production. And then we take it into the theater and the director comes and so forth and so on. But this initiative brought the playwright into that collaborative process. We're looking at bringing plays which speak to us in a very authentic and valid way. Plays that tell of the African and African American experience in ways that we have not previously seen it. And also to encourage the griot, the playwright, if you will, to bring forth more affirmative stories about us. So that's the show part of it, if you will. That's the creative aspect. And then there's the business part of it. How do we get the resources to produce these plays? How do we generate the marketing efforts and all of those things? How do we pay our bills? How do we garner patrons to come in to see the work and to appreciate it and return again? So that's the business aspect. And I assume as we go forward, we'll talk more about that.
How do you have the nerve to think that you can garner the kind of resources that it obviously takes to occupy your own freestanding facility and to continue to do this year after year from 1971 you've been doing
yes,
this?
Since 1971. And
you weren't always in your own space.
Oh, no.
Where did you start?
That, I think, Gloria, I have to say, has been the struggle historically, not only for African American theater, but theater in general in the United States, because of how the art is not viewed as positively as it should be within the context of this culture. But nevertheless, we came out of previous companies because there's been African American black theater in Chicago since 1905. So Eta Creative Arts Foundation, Chocolate Chips, the Black Ensemble, Kumba, the entities that we have now really are outgrowths of those previous companies. And I think as I came into it, to this picture in a group called Drama Incorporated, the woman who organized and founded that company was constantly saying, we've got to have a place to work. And indeed, we did find many places to work, and we would fix them up, we would paint them, we would do all kinds of things. And as soon as we did that, the landlord would come and say, oh my goodness, I had no idea this was such a wonderful facility. There are a lot of things we could do with it. Then we'd find ourselves searching for another place. And I think out of the civil rights movement came the consciousness of some of us. Nora was probably a baby during those times, but Useni and some of us came together, Haki. Well, he would like to think so, but hey, come on. But Haki and some others, you know, the Catalyst family we were just talking about, we came together and recognized that one thing needed to be done was to institutionalize not only the educational functions, you know, in terms of private independent schools, but the cultural component as well. And that led us to actively seek to find our own place, because you cannot have an institution without having a house from which you emanate.
Exactly. Dr. Margaret Burroughs told me that very same thing. You know, she started the museum in her own living room, but she said you have to give it a space.
And I would say that Margaret has been a mentor to many of us, an example.
Right, of I Can, which is the title of this show, I Can. Nora, you were a baby back when we were all getting started.
18.
How did you...
18.
You were 18 back when we all got started. So how did you get involved in this? Did you follow some role model to where you are now?
Well, I had role models all over the place. So, first of all, a lot of the people who were involved in the movement, as Abena mentioned, Haki, people, Walter Bradford, people from out of town, Nikki Giovanni, Abena, Useni, Val Gray Ward, a lot of the people came over and hung out at my house. Not because I was there, but because...
I wonder why they were hanging out at your house.
Well, I had these two very strange parents.
Those strange parents?
Henry Blakely and Gwendolyn Brooks-Blakely, alias Gwendolyn Brooks. And so, especially for as long as I can remember, there were parties of writers and actors and artists and so forth. But especially in the 60s, it really became kind of like one of the major gathering places where everybody came and talked about the problems and the successes and so forth. And that definitely affected what I wanted to do. And then when I got out of college, I was kidnapped into theater by Val Gray Ward. So I said, I wish I could do this. At the end of the play that I was congratulating her on, she said, and our newest member of Kuumba is Nora Blakely. Exactly. And so from there, in absolute panic, I began to be in theater and get more and more involved in theater and then in dance and so forth, and eventually started my own organization, and that was, of course, Chocolate Chips.
Of course. And you know, I just think about when I was growing up, and there was a place at the corner of 51st and then South Park, now King Drive, that's, I think, maybe called the Baptist Institute at this point. I don't remember what it was called, but it was a building in which there were all kinds of classes offered to the neighborhood children. And there couldn't have been any costs involved, because I don't remember anybody ever giving me any money to pay those people. But they taught drama, they taught dancing, they taught pottery and woodworking and all kinds of interesting things.
That was the Parkway Community House, which later became the Chicago Baptist Institute. But then out of Parkway Community House came a historically important company, which was the Skyloft Players. Margaret Burroughs was a part of that. Richard Wright was a part of it. Langston Hughes in the very early days, in the 30s and 40s. And I was mindful, as Nora was talking, about how people came to her house because of her mother. That as I was growing up, my aunt and Margaret were very good friends. And so I had an opportunity to be in the company of Paul Robeson and Josh White. And I'm thinking that here, Useni, the son of Marion Perkins, one of the most famous sculptors, you know, internationally ever, probably was surrounded with those kinds of literary and artistic types as well. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Which probably accounts for all the ways in which you have spread yourself out. An author, a poet, a playwright, the founder of a youth organization, and then running around the country consulting and speaking and lecturing and spreading yourself real thin. Of all these things that you do, which one is your pet? Which one is the nearest and dearest to your heart?
I think that all of them interface with each other, really, and I think that's what that's why I've been very fortunate, because my art interfaces with, quote, social service practicing and you know, things like that. I think that my writings reflect my creative energy, and my creative energy comes from my social involvement. So I think it's compatible.
Well, I need to tell you right here and right now that some of the most creative work you have done has been your documented work, which is Home is a Dirty Street, the Social Oppression of Black Children. I use it as a basic text in my child development class. And I always bring to everyone's attention when they try to tell us why our children are misbehaving or why they are not living up to standards that are being set in this society, that the whole society is organized against them. And you have proven that in the study that you did on North Lawndale, that all of the institutions in the society are lined up against the children. And how do we expect children who are being crushed every day to find a way to survive that? Is theater useful in that regard?
I think when we talk about theater, we have to see theater as an art form, and an art form is an expression of culture. I think the other comment I would make about those of us you have here today is that we all have many different backgrounds. I think you know that I'm a social worker, community organizer and manager, and Nora's an educator, and Useni's a social worker. Alan Edge, the one who did the scene, works in the post office. He's also a marvelous comedian. And Jennifer Hunt works at one of the community city colleges. Kennedy King is a counselor. So I think what I'm really getting to here is that we tend to see the art and the artist as set aside and not integral to the systems in the society. But more importantly, the culture is the primary determinant of how people will see themselves and how they will behave and how they will project themselves, not only from the past to the present, but into the future. As a social worker, I know when this nonsense started, Morning Hand started a lot of it, when they began to define our families, define our institutions, define us as the deviants of the society. Now, the fact that we are black, we can do nothing about it, and I'm one of the ones that say, thank you, Jesus.
I don't want
anything done about that. But the point being that we have to have institutions which support the values and the norms and the standards which has kept kept us on the planet called Earth since the beginning of time, which has nothing to do with the way that we are defined, but has everything to do with the way we define ourselves. And that is what the theater can do.
And that importance of culture also gets back to that need for a space, because it gives the surrounding community something that they can center on, something that they can recognize is there, and they know that they can come to, as opposed to just hoping that they can find it at some point. CHIPS does not have its own space, but we've been fortunate enough to be one of the arts and residence companies at Kennedy King College, which you were mentioning earlier as one of the city colleges, along with another arts organization, Muntu Dance Theater. And the difference between the way that people responded to our company before we were there, when you just had to kind of find us when we were touring around, and between when there was a recognizable place that you could come and sit in a theater and see us. We still tour, but also knowing that there was this place, and we know that we will find them here. Wherever else they may be, we know we can find them in this place. Just reinforces, and a lot of teachers come to us and say, "Oh, well, we didn't know this was here, and this is so wonderful because we've been going downtown, etc." And it's so great to know that there are these companies here, that there's CHIPS, that there's Showfolk with with ETA, and that there are options within the community, places that you can rely on coming back to.
May I relate that to the money part?
Yes.
When I think about ETA's close to 900,000, close to $1 million budget, 80%.
Say those numbers again. I like those
This year,
numbers.
fiscal year 1994, our budget is around 900,000. It may be slightly over because budgets are estimated. So I would say between 900,000 and 1 million. And this is a company, an institution that started in 1991 with $0, okay. But what I'm trying to get to is that 80% of that operating budget goes directly back into the African American community primarily. It goes back in terms of staff salaries, artist fees, ancillary services for the printing, taxis, and all the things that people use when they come to the theater. Because as you know, people come to ETA, they dress, they go to dinner, they do this, that. So this is more than just entertainment, fun, and games. It is also a way that we can infuse dollars into our own economy, that we can keep our money, that same high $500, as Jeff Donaldson used to say, circulating among us.
Over and over
But the
again.
point is, we have an obligation to support our own communities, provide jobs for ourselves, and the theater does that in a real sense.
Exactly. Producer in more way than just producing plays,
Right.
but producing employment and producing income and producing, as you say, ancillary kinds of expenditure so that surrounding businesses can
Right.
also get a piece of the action. When Dr. Burroughs had a writer's workshop once that met at her house, and I had the nerve to think that I could write, and I went over there with the likes of Frank London Brown.
Oh my goodness. He
And
wrote for us a long time ago.
he just mesmerized me, and I just picked up my pen and tucked myself quietly away because I just decided, I mean, he was so outstanding. So how do you protect a fledgling, a would-be writer, a would-be actor, who sees these giants, who sees these people who are born with this gift and who overshadow them so much? Useni, do you have any experience with mentoring any young playwrights or advising or consulting them? Who mentored you? Who kept you alive when you were just finding your wings?
I think, as Abena expressed, that I'm a part of a continuum. I was very fortunate in growing up to be exposed to writers. Some of the writers that Abena mentioned, I came in contact with, perhaps did not know the significance of these people, but something rubs off spiritually. Richard Wright, Paul Robeson, I knew Frank London Brown, and it just seemed like that you just flow into what you are exposed to. That's
were
why
you
it's very
encouraged?
indirectly. My father, who was a very outstanding artist, actually wanted to be a playwright. He and Ted Ward were very close friends, and my father started off pursuing playwriting, self-taught. He would be supportive, but he never did say, well, this is what you're supposed to do. I think to show by example, and this is the best way to teach, to show by example. And I became hooked on theater, I think when I was very young. My father took me to see Othello, Paul Robeson.
Oh my goodness.
Historic
that you should
play
be
that
able
he
to sit
performed
here
with
and
Jose
say
Ferrer.
that.
And we set up in the Peanut Gallery at the Erlanger Theater. And that was just an inspirational experience that I've never forgotten. And from that moment, I began to think about playwriting. Although earlier I was involved with writing. Nora's mother, our distinguished Gwendolyn Brooks, I was involved with a writer's workshop with she and Frank London Brown and your father. So I had this opportunity. But I don't think that people are born with this. Some people may say that. It takes hard work. I'm still developing. And I think that we're all gifted. And we all have these gifts, but these gifts are never cultivated because these institutions and society does not recognize these gifts. But it takes a lot of hard work. Even if you have a gift, it is not on automatic. It is something that you have to work diligently. I was telling Abena, even today, I was working all day on a script, which I can't divulge, and I only completed 3 pages, and I'd literally been working on that since about 7 o'clock this morning. I only completed 10 pages, and those pages I may have to throw away. It's a lot of hard work and sweat, but what you get out of it, I think, is tremendous, and if it has any impact on those that read your material, then you have been rewarded.
It's certainly worth the effort. I need to ask Nora to tell us just briefly about the excerpt that we're about to see in about 2 seconds.
You're going to see an excerpt from Grim Goodies from Chocolate Chips Theater Company, and Grim Goodies is our adjustment of Grimm's fairy tales. So this particular one is an excerpt from Rapunzel, the Real Story, and this is right about the time that the witch finds out that Rapunzel has been seeing a prince, and she is not happy.
You are going to help me with my magic words, aren't you? Oh, yes, you are. You. Remember the words are, come on down. And if you don't help me, I'll turn you all into little pimples. Hey, Rapunzel, come on down. Come, my pretty. And why are you getting so pretty, my pretty? Bored, I guess. Well, don't worry, my pretty. It's only another 50 years or so. 50 years? Of course, dear. When you look like me, that's when I'll let you out of the tower. Why, when the princess and I'll... You let a prince up here. I'll show you something to do. That's right, cucumber. That would be like being green. You will pay. You will die. Both of you will die. You will pay. Yes.
Wait.
Oh, she's dead.
Don't get too close.
Oh. I will get you! I will get you!
Excuse me, witch. But you're dead.
Who's in this stuff?
Oh, that's Mannequin. Gets Read my contract.
It is hereby decreed
That all princes who free women from towels will then live happily ever after. Yes.
Betsy, is this the end?
Nope. We gotta sing. Think you can do it?
My daddy didn't name me after him for nothing.
Uh-oh.
We tell you this story so you can see.
Have a woman like her met a man like me. The witch didn't scare us with her hats.
I wonder what's gonna happen next. Happen next. Happen next. I wonder what's gonna happen next.
Happen next. Happen next. I wonder what's gonna happen next. Happen next.
You think it's over, but it's not. I'll be back for all of you. All of you. I will get you.
Joining us in the studio is Jennifer Hunt, who is the actress who played Rosie in Rings Around Rosie that we saw at the beginning of our program. And Rosie is a counselor in, a counseling professor, right, at Kennedy King College. And we're going to talk to you in a second, but I got to ask Nora about this excerpt on Rapunzel. Tell us a little about the background for that.
Well, all of our shows at Chocolate Chips come from an Afrocentric point of view, whether they're adaptations or originals. So in this particular production, what we were trying to do was make some of Grimm's fairy tales more accessible to black kids. So Rapunzel, in this particular one, instead of having long blonde hair and being carried off by someone on a white horse, had extension braids. She's rescued from the witch by Reggie Prince, who is a jogger who lives in the neighborhood, etc. And we took the humor from there. So there are adaptations like that, but there are also original materials that we do. For instance, Which West is Which is based on the black cowboy and the exodus from the southern states to Kansas and Missouri and further on west, or shows like the one we'll be doing later on this year, Kingdom of Gold, which is based on historical fact and an 11th century West African legend. But all of them, from whatever position that we start from, attempt to re-relate things to the children in hopefully in a way that we believe that will make them understand these things better.
I must ask you, why do you think we need to adapt Grimm's fairy tales? Why don't we just leave them alone and have the Black Fairy and other tales by Useni Eugene Perkins write our own plays?
Or Nora Blakely.
Or are you doing it because you know our children are going to be exposed to these plays, these fairy tales anyway, and you feel that they should have some redirection of those negative images that they're going to encounter?
Thought, because we do a lot of original things, some of which are fairy tales or folk tales or whatever that are either based on African folk tales or stories that I've written myself, or things based on historical information or social situations of what's happening to kids in schools, in their neighborhoods now, etc. We do a lot of those things. But we did also want to do this. These are stories that kids hear constantly, and so what we wanted to do was play with them from what we felt was a black perspective. Little Red Riding Hood is done from the position of a little girl in Africa who wakes up from a dream about Little Red Riding Hood and thinks that nothing like that could happen to her, and then that entire story is then told in African dance. So we try to do a wide range of things. So definitely the body of our work is original material or adaptations of black folk tales from here in the United States or in Africa or in the islands or whatever. But this particular thing was just something that we thought would be amusing as well to play with and see what we came up with, and this is what happened with it.
That's the horn of a dilemma, but I wanted to relate it to the question you raised earlier about the playwright and the writer and how you felt when you were there with Frank London Brown. Is that the playwright, the writer, is always developing. And one of the things I know Useni's long been concerned about, having written a lot of work for children, certainly being followed by Renako Jahi in developing work for young people, original work for young audiences, that the problem is essentially the writer coming to understand that we do indeed have our own story to tell. And that's one part of it. That's what we discovered as we moved into the PDI. But then the next thing is finding the writer who can really write these kinds of stories, you know, who can tell our story. That's such a sophisticated and precious skill. And the third thing is to find venues and companies to produce them.
Well, is the fourth thing to find actors and actresses like Jennifer Hunt to cast for these plays?
Oh, absolutely.
Plays?
You cannot do it
the collaboration
unless you have
is not complete until you get down to that
That's
level.
the whole circle. That's the whole circle.
Let's talk to Jennifer. You know, some people do feel that when they do the things that they enjoy, that they still need to keep one foot in what they call the real world with a for real job. And since you're a counseling professor at one of the city colleges and you're also an actress, is that your feeling? Are you keeping a for real job, as they say, and doing the acting as a sort of avocation?
Yes and no.
Right.
In answer to that, I decided at 3 to be an actress and at 9 to be a psychologist. So I'm living both of my dreams. I'm very blessed. The acting got me through college because I had flunked out of one of your major universities here in Chicago, and my father he just refused to pay tuition. He told me to act my way through college. And I did. So when I found out I could do both, like right now, summer school is going on. I'm not working this summer. I perform because I enjoy it. You know, when I retire, I will eventually just perform full time, but I'm fortunate enough to, you know, to live both my dreams, and that's what Rings Around Rosie was about, was, you know, living your dreams. And I think acting is one way of letting black children see dreams, and when they start taking classes and participating in it, it lets them know you can live your dreams, no matter what it is.
That's a very important
point. And we do
point.
pay. I think that's the important point. When you say avocation, it means without pay.
Well, no, I certainly don't mean to suggest that actors and actresses don't get paid. But some of them seem to work on regular jobs in lieu of doing this as a full-time career.
Well, you
and
know,
I'm thinking that it is because they want to supplement income rather than this is, because a job is not my dream. And I just can't imagine anybody having a dream of working for someone else.
Well, but see, counseling, I'm still helping black people.
Okay.
My dream is to help black people.
Okay.
And I happen to be fortunate enough to, you know, be a counselor at a black college. So one of the things that I like about it is whatever I do, whether it's performing or whether it's counseling, I'm still helping black people.
See, that's important because what she does, talking about, is enlarging the dream. Because as you know, I was in the YWCA full-time up till I left in '82 to come full-time to ETA, but ETA and the acting and the dance started, you know, when I was 3. Is that a special number?
That's a special number.
But the point being, people have said, well, how could you have been a social worker, community organizer, administrative manager, and then come and be a producer? Say it's the same thing.
It is.
I'm in the people business, and what we say about ETA, to respond to your earlier question, is we looked at it strategically and asked ourselves, what business are we in? We said we're in the human development, the social development, the economic development business within using the arts as a medium within an Afrocentric context. In other words, we're working for the liberation of our people, for the self-determination and self-affirmation of our people. And that's what I did when I was working in the YWCA. That's what I'm doing now, and that's what I hope to continue to do.
And it is another job, whether it's set design or acting or arts administration or playwriting or whatever. It is another job, and those people in the arts who don't recognize that usually don't take it seriously enough to continue in it.
That's an interesting observation, Nora. You know, they say that all the world's a stage and we are merely actors on it. So we need to figure out how to do this work and get paid for it. And that's the question that I have for Abena. How do you make show business a business? How do you realize finally that this is not a plaything, that this is not a pastime, but it is serious business?
Well, I guess if we all agree that the depiction of our lives in a mirror kind of image sense is one of the most important kinds of work that one can do, then one says, then how do we institutionalize it? How do we provide a foundation and a structure to make this happen so that when people come into it, the work can be valued and the work can be paid for? I think number one, the work has to be something of value to the constituency. When I say that, I'm talking about the broader community. People who are going to buy the tickets have to value it. That means then the quality of the work must be good. The same principles apply to the, quote, the product of this business as in any other business. The more it suits you, the more it meets your needs, and sometimes these needs are not even perceived by the public. With ETA, when we started with the building, I think there have been very few people who would say, yes, we do really need a cultural institution. But once they began to see it come and began to participate in its becoming, then this is what we call in the social work field unfelt need. And people began to respond because they said, my goodness, this is wonderful. It's right in the middle of our neighborhood. This is someplace our children can come, and so forth and so on. And then you have to have people to do the work, people who bring competency to do the work. And that's the actors, obviously. The writer has to be competent, be able to tell the story in an entertaining and fun way. You remember the plays of the 60s where we were in the, quote, protest mode? Mm-hmm. Well, I maintain that those plays essentially were not about African people. They were about other people and how we responded to them. Mm-hmm. But once we begin to tell our own story, then the writer has to hone into that and tell it in an entertaining and fun fashion, because we like fun. We also like style and grace, and we like things to start on time. I mean, all the things that we know that people really like and appreciate have to be part of creating the value of the business. And then the people who work, they have to be able to do it in a quality, competent fashion.
Without previous experience, then, how do people who have not had $1 million budget acquaint themselves with managing such a large budget and also doing all the things that it takes? Because I see a lot more going on at ETA than just what the actors and actresses are doing on the stage.
That's right.
And so you have people in your office, and you have summer program for the children, and you have all kinds of other things, a Playwright's development initiative. You have a lot of things
and classes, but that's all part of using the arts as a media.
I understand, but I'm asking you, where do you find competent personnel to do things that they haven't done before?
Let me put it this way.
Okay.
When we started out, we started with a vision which has obviously grown, and the implementation of the vision has grown. But when you take, I'm a co-founder, okay? Mm-hmm. So
who's the founder? Who's the other?
Okoro Harold Johnson is the other.
Okay.
Archie Weston, attorney at law, was the third person, and Al Johnson of the Shoreland News was the fourth one.
All right.
So we had a vision which has now been enlarged upon. Mm-hmm. I'm the one that has really done the overall thing, while Cora is still there, and he teaches adult drama and has been actively involved with our board of directors. Then Renako Jahi came when he was 16. He came as a student, referred by Oscar Brown Jr. Mm-hmm. And now he's the artistic director, so obviously he's found a career path there, and he's very good. Darrell Goodman came, who's a technical director. He was 16. He was in the Neighborhood Youth Corps, a gangbanger, who decided another course of life. Mm-hmm. The business manager was Terry White, was a volunteer for a long time, had experience at the Archdiocese Catholic Charities. So what I'm essentially saying is that we have brought to this place a certain set of competencies, and we have all grown in our abilities as a result of doing this work. So it's not only what we have brought from an academic point of view, but from a job experience point of view, but also a constant enlargement of our own capacities, plus the 500 volunteers who bring their competencies.
Well, now 500 volunteers ought to go a long way toward giving some support.
It does.
I want to ask Useni, if he is like Duke Ellington when he writes, do you think about particular people performing your plays? Because I'm told that by Kenny Burrell, that when Duke Ellington wrote, he had a particular instrument and musician in mind to carry the concept forward. Yeah. Do you write from that perspective?
No, I think there's some similarities, but there's dissimilarities between writing music and writing plays. But no, you don't think about, well, sometimes if there's a person that requests you, an actor that said, I did write, and I did write one piece for a very close friend, and I think you know Useni Madison. I wrote a piece especially for her. It was called Our Sun-Baked Lips Will Kiss the Earth. So that was written especially for Useni. So on occasions you may do that, but normally I think a playwright is not thinking about a performer. Take the play that Philip Hayes Dean has written on Paul Robeson. James Earl Jones was the first performer. Now, I don't think that Philip Hayes Dean had James Earl Jones in mind, but he knew that he had to have an extraordinary performer. And now Avery Brooks is performing that role. So to get back to your question very specifically, no, I don't think when you're writing, unless you are commissioned, asked specifically to write for an actor, that you write out of a character development that any good actor can perform.
Does an actress or an actor go out looking for certain parts that they feel fit them, or they want this part because it offers a lot of expression for them?
Well, one of the things you do is to read as many and all audition notices as you can, and you go out and you audition. Sometimes you're lucky enough to find something that you feel very comfortable with, and then other times you have to reach that level of performance where you make the piece yours, where you just take it and internalize it.
I see. What about casting, Nora? When you're looking for someone to perform in a play, now here's the playwright who has written a play, he's turned it over to the producer, is that right? Is that how it goes? Who do you turn your work into?
You submit it to.
You submit it to someone like Abena, right? And then if you decide that this is a good piece, then you cast for it. You post notices for auditions.
Then with the artistic director, we talk about who we might want to direct the piece, and then we ask the director if he or she is interested in directing this piece.
Oh, I see.
Then the director actually cast the show, and the auditions are done administratively. I mean, they say when they want to have them and such, but the directors cast the shows.
Okay.
Also, if your company's been going for a while, there are some people that are, if not constants, then are semi-regulars. And so there are some people that have been in other shows and have expressed an interest in continuing to be in shows. So you know that you also have that pool to work from if their particular talents will work in that particular show. And then you can also do general auditions. Some companies do them for the year. Some companies do them per production or a combination of those different styles. And then you also have people, as your company gets to be known more, that just call up and say, hey, I want to know when you're doing a show again, you know, so I want to be considered for the next production.
Now, when do we set the budget for this production? When do we talk about the dollars, what it will take to produce this play?
Our budgets are set annually and recommended by the Finance Committee to the Board of Directors in November of every year, and we're on a calendar fiscal year, so our budget runs from January through December. And we have a general idea of what productions cost at ETA based on our historical past, because just since we renovated the theater and did all of that, I think we've done a total of some 40 or 50 productions, so we can average it out and anticipate what those costs will be. They vary, but not that much.
So you have already decided what you will spend on a play, and you also have decided which plays you will produce during the next year.
Right.
So you know now what your schedule is.
Absolutely.
For the remainder of the year.
For the remainder of the year, which is Steppers Ball, by the way, which opens July 16th and runs through August 22nd.
All right.
But
I'm looking
by the way,
okay.
but the season for the next season, 94-95, is already set, and that will begin in September and run through August of 95.
All right.
Right, the same for us. And we usually do three primary productions. We laughingly call it main stage, although it's not like there's another little stage running around. We do 3 primary productions each year, and 2 of them are usually smaller productions with anywhere from 4 to 6 people in them, smaller, less expensive sets and so forth. And 1 is usually a bigger production, a lot more music, a lot more dance, which are more expensive because of the extra personnel that you need for them, and also a larger cast, usually 8 to 10 people, something like that.
What's the cost of writing, Useni? There's a cost of production, but what does it cost you not to be somewhere else, but to be sitting at a desk or table, composing, creating?
I think it's very minimal unless you use your in-kind costs. So that's talking about paper and pencil, but there's
you
a lot.
don't lose income by not being somewhere on somebody's job?
Well, most writers, I would assume, like myself, we have other jobs, so we write when we are able to. You write at night, you write early in the morning. Most of us have to work. Most writers have to work. But definitely most black writers, even successful black writers, most are working. So you find time to write. And so it's difficult to put a cost to it, but you can put a value on what you have written after the writing has been complete. Even if it's not published or performed, I think it has a value that you can make a judgment on.
Well, it certainly has
Tony
been.
is still at the university, isn't she? Toni Morrison. Isn't she still at the university?
Yeah.
And even my
Writers
mother
very
has,
seldom enjoy the
Yes.
luxury of just sitting
Right.
and
Well, we
writing.
don't,
Even my mother
we
has to
don't enjoy
lecture
the luxury
regularly.
of
Sonia Sanchez
unlimited
is full-time.
time. So we're going to have to go to our final segment in our show, and it's been so good to have you, Jennifer Hunt.
Thank you.
Useni Eugene Perkins and Nora Blakely and Dr. Abena Joan Brown.
Well, thank you,
Been
Dr.
very good to
Gloria.
have all of you.